So Highguard has been out for a few hours now. People have been waiting with bated breath to see how this game would perform, given the unusual circumstances surrounding it. The fact that it was announced at the Game Awards as the big finale, only for that to be like a huge marketing mistake, because we're talking about a brand new IP from a brand new studio tackling something that is hero shooter-esque, and for that to be the big finale kind of turned a lot of people off. And then the game kind of just went radio silent for the duration of its marketing campaign, except for like 3 days prior to its launch. That's when we start to see some activity. And today, the game has finally launched, and we're starting to see finally a lot of activity on social media, trying to explain the game, what it is. There's this video right here titled Highguard Official Launch Showcase that kind of walks you through the entire gameplay loop of this game. And it is essentially described as a PvP raid shooter, taking inspiration from survival games and the way you like raid other people's bases, but in like a fast-paced first-person shooter format. That also has aspects of like Overwatch, it has hero shooter elements. It's got some elements of like Battle Royale in the way there's like item pickups and equipment pickups to upgrade your character. It's also got aspects of like Rainbow Six Siege with that attacker-defender gameplay loop. There's definitely some inspiration taken from like the MOBA genre and titles like Counter-Strike and Valorant, and like, the way you have to like plant and defuse bombs as one of the methods to take down enemy bases. And, you can tell where all of its individual components were taken from, but it's all combined in a way that tries to aim for a different kind of gameplay loop and gameplay experience. And we're here to analyze in this video how it's all been going so far. Now, do note that the game's only been out for a couple hours, and so the real test will be over the course of like a week or a month even. That's when we can get like a really full picture. But I will say that within the first few hours of the game's launch, it's been a little rough. Now, on one hand, when it comes to like peak concurrent players on Steam, it's not doing so bad. Clearly, this game garnered a lot of attention, especially due to the unusual circumstances surrounding it and the fact that people were covering that unusual circumstance, covering the fact that the game has gone radio silent, covering the fact that it was a mistake to announce it at the Game Awards as like the big finale of that showcase. And so enough eyes were on this game where the curiosity has certainly struck a chord, and so people are at the very least checking the game out, with the all-time peak concurrent player numbers right now sitting at, almost 100,000 players, 97,249 players. So at the very least, we can say that Highguard is by no means Concord 2. Concord was just such a disaster when it comes to how few people played it. Like, we're talking about a game that launched to roughly 2,500 players as the all-time peak concurrent player number on Steam. Whereas with Highguard, at the very least, people are curious enough that we're seeing like decent numbers at launch. And it helps that Highguard is actually a free-to-play game, whereas Concord was a game you had to pay for. But even when Concord was in like its free-to-play beta, the numbers were so minuscule that like there was literally zero chance for that game to garner any sort of mass interest that would allow it to make a comeback. Whereas with Highguard, at least there are enough eyes on it, and we are seeing some buzz on social media. Now, not all of the buzz right now is entirely positive, and just because a game starts with like decent peak concurrent player numbers doesn't mean that, especially for a free-to-play live service like Highguard, it'll be maintained over the long term. Recall that Multiverses peaked at, over 150,000 players, and it did fairly well at launch, but then like as people engaged with the game and realized there's not much else to it, it eventually like dipped and died off. And so, we can't rule out that possibility for Highguard. Again, I think a better picture will present itself once we wait like a week to a month to really gauge where the game's at after some time has passed, after that initial glow you get from playing a new game kind of passes, whether there's a game that keeps bringing people back over the course of, like a long-term time period. But in terms of initial reception, the fact that the game has opened to overwhelmingly negative reviews is not particularly confidence-inspiring. 17% from just a little under 1,900 reviews. And, some of that does come from the fact that Highguard's optics were so negative due to the way it was marketed at the Game Awards as the big finale. But even people who've checked this game out and given it enough of a chance and tried out a match or two are not fully in love with what they've played so far. So, for example, one of the big criticisms is that 3v3 does not feel right for the format of this game due to the fact that the maps are so big in Highguard to the point where 3v3 just feels too sparse. It feels like you don't encounter players as often, with this reviewer believing that the size would fit better for 5v5 or 6v6. The guns feel nice to shoot, but feel uninspired. Audio is weird because people sound like they're above you when they're actually in front of you, and vice versa. The game needs serious work in order to be what it was hyped up to be. And people are saying similar things where not all of the thought processes and considerations surrounding the game design feel appropriate. And then people are also highlighting a lot of technical issues, with people either having to wait a long time to enter matches due to long queues, and when they do enter matches, they're reporting a lot of bugs and issues and getting kicked out, and also performance issues is something that people have been discussing through these Steam reviews. And I will say that I myself have tried to play the game and check it out, but currently it's proving to be impossible, because right now when I try to get into the game, even when I just try to play through the tutorial, the game boots me before I have a chance to play anything. This has been my experience for the last, like 30 minutes or so. So let me show you right here. You can see that you have to play the tutorial before you can engage with its other modes. So I click on it and I hit play, and you'll see that it'll find a match, and eventually it will. But once it does, what happens is I get taken to the loading screen, as you'll see right here. And then I'll just get booted out. Watch. This has been my experience with Highguard for the last, 30 minutes, like the last hour. Like, I wanted to at least play a match before making this video, but I'm not capable of doing so. And looking through social media, I'm not the only one experiencing these issues. A lot of people are reporting that they're having trouble just like playing the game at all. So technical mishaps at launch, definitely not helping optics surrounding Highguard. And that's the risk you take when you don't do like a beta test, when you don't allow people to check the title out prior to launch to work out the kinks. The game is out fully. It is not advertised as a beta, and so people will treat it as such, and so that's not painting a great picture surrounding the title. On social media right now, you can see that people have been experiencing all kinds of technical issues, like long queue times and error messages saying that there are not enough players, which means that a lot of players are having trouble connecting to the game, as well as errors like this one saying that there's an online error, your connection to Highguard has been lost. A lot of server issues that are associated with games that, have an influx of players. But even for the people who managed to get in on social media, you'll find folks saying that 3v3 was a weird choice when the game, given the size of the maps, feels that it should at least be 6v6. Aspects of its upgrade system already being criticized, with Paul Tassi saying like the looting part of Highguard, that's akin to like Battle Royales, seems like everyone just gets the exact same quality upgrades each round with a tiny bit of exploring, so it sort of cancels out. I don't really get it. It doesn't feel necessarily like Apex. Paul Tassi also spoke about the 3v3 nature of the game and the map, saying that traversing with horses makes it more tenable to have 3v3 instead of 6v6, but the problem is 95% of the fighting will be in the bases, so it might as well just be sort of a normal diffuse mode, but with extra steps. Other folks are not impressed by the game, are saying things like Highguard looks like every hero shooter-esque game I've seen in the last 10 years. It sort of feels like Realm Royale / Paladins, but in 2026. Not for me, but maybe people will enjoy it. And just searching through what social media reception has been surrounding Highguard, you'll find that a lot of it is not particularly very enthusiastic. One of the top comments here reads, Highguard feels in every aspect like a fan-made mode off of a pre-existing larger game. It's completely safe, inoffensive, and lacks a single shred of identity. The shiny ArtStation portfolio end result of an entropic, self-consuming industry. Here's someone else bullet pointing some of the issues that they had with the game, and it's a lot of these same issues that plenty of people are expressing, saying that, just on a technical level, the game is rough at launch with constant crashes and bad optimization. And then from a game design standpoint, this individual feels as though 3v3 raids feel absolutely boring. The game really needed a mode with more players. And then finally, endless, not enough players messages when queuing, so more technical issues that prevent people from even playing the game. Now, that's not to say that there isn't some positive reception out there, with people appreciating that Highguard does try to reinvent the wheel a little bit, where, yeah, they take components from all these other games, but they mix it all up together in this concoction that tries for something new, this PvP raid thing that they're going for, this genre that does feel like a different take on some traditional gameplay loops or traditional gameplay elements that are combined to build something that does feel like it doesn't try to be like every other shooter. And for those media outlets and creators who did attend the event for Highguard, where they got to play, like 6 hours in a less technically compromised environment, reception seemingly has been positive. And the general consensus is that while, nobody knows for sure whether this will gain traction and will allow this live service to live for many years to come, at the very least, there's a general appreciation for the fact that this game does feel like it tried something new and isn't like just a copy and paste of the same formats that are out there. It's not necessarily revolutionary, but it does feel like it's trying to invent a game mode that is an amalgam of all of these different things that is greater than the sum of its parts. But from the technical issues at launch to the general feedback that 3v3 is not quite doing it, given the size of the maps, and a lot of like design considerations that they couldn't tweak because they didn't host the beta, all of that ultimately is creating an environment where Highguard isn't being seen as worth the amount of hype that the Game Awards gave it as the big finale announcement for that show, and the amount of hype that Jeff Keighley gave it through all of the tweets that he's been posting, and even 48 hours prior to launch. Jeff Keighley was confident enough to tweet that in 48 hours, I'll be accepting your apologies. But right now, it's not looking like this tweet is living up to its level of confidence. Now, with all said and done, it's only been a few hours since the game's launch. No doubt that developers will start to tweak the game based on feedback. No doubt that people will start to get more acclimated with this kind of unique brand of gameplay loop, this PvP raid mode that the developers are trying to push for here. And again, over the course of the next few days and weeks, we'll get a better picture for the status of this live service, whether its launch woes will persist or whether all of that will get resolved and people will start to jive with this game over time as time goes on. And, once I'm able to get into a game, I'd love to check it out for myself and share my own thoughts on what it's like playing the title. I do want to give this game a chance. I do want to make sure I play through a couple matches before I express how I feel about the quality of the game itself. But right now, I'm not seeing anything indicating that this game is absolutely safe for the long term, that is absolutely beloved across the board, which is kind of what this game needed due to how poorly received the marketing campaign of it was. And while we're on the topic of that marketing campaign, news outlet Kotaku did talk to the developers about the marketing campaign and the announcement of the game, and they kind of talked about how all of that played out, because the original plan for Highguard was to pull in Apex Legends. The original plan was, in fact, to shadow drop the title, but then apparently Jeff Keighley reached out with a proposal and a plan. Here's what co-founder Chad Greenier told Kotaku, quote, "Look, we always plan for, a surprise release, but then Jeff came in and wanted to do something special and put us in the Game Awards. We were going to do a shadow drop, since day one, almost since forming this company. We did it with Apex and it worked well." Now, I will highlight again that the reason it worked with Apex Legends and why Highguard wouldn't benefit as much from this maneuver is the fact that Apex Legends came from a well-known and renowned studio, Respawn Entertainment. It was, within the Titanfall universe, so it had some brand recognition to it. And it released around a time when the genre that Apex Legends tackled, Battle Royale, was really popular, whereas Highguard is releasing at a time when things like the hero shooter genre and, the live service elements that it tries to tackle are not at the level of popularity that they were at the time that Apex Legends launched, when it tried to kind of pave its road in the Battle Royale market. The conditions that Highguard tried to pull in Apex Legends were not the same, were not equivalent, so Highguard really took a tremendous risk that may not yield the level of success that Apex Legends saw with that maneuver, due to how differing these circumstances are. But I suppose the spotlight that the Game Awards can bring was too alluring, though, as we've seen, that can be a double-edged sword. The level of hype that, especially as the big finale, that is expected of such an announcement, if you don't live up to that hype, it can bite you in the ass, especially if you're such a brand new studio with such a new IP. Greenier continues here, "We have known Jeff for a long time, and he said, let me do something that's maybe a little risky in hindsight, but different to take a free-to-play PvP raid shooter and do something with it. So we rushed the trailer together. I wish the reception had been better, but in hindsight, we made a trailer to entertain really quickly and didn't show the gameplay loop and what's different and unique. And I do agree with this take because the trailer that was shown at the Game Awards was so uninformative that it made the game look like just any other generic hero shooter. Whereas like the gameplay overview shown right here that highlights, what it tries to do that's different does do a better job of showing and spotlighting some of the aspects of Highguard that maybe stands out a little compared to the other games out there. We don't know if it's a winning formula quite yet until, more people get to spend more time with the game. But at the very least, it would have done a better job of giving a better impression than that original trailer did, which was just such a clearly rush looking and generic trailer that it painted like the worst possible picture they could have for their game. Like they might have actually been better off just shadow dropping the title than accepting Jeff Keighley's proposal. He kind of accidentally doomed the game through the sheer level of expectation that he placed by making this game the big finale when it still has to find its footing. It feels like Jeff Keighley made it run before it could even walk. Not the intended effect, and I know Jeff Keighley was just genuinely excited about this game and really wanting to spotlight the developer's work. And I do respect and appreciate Jeff's intentions, but as they say, sometimes the road to hell is paved in good intentions. But yeah, it's just too early to say how Highguard will perform over the long term. It generally takes a couple days to really gauge how hooked people are on the game. If we start to see players drop off from Highguard over the next few days, then already that's not a good sign. But if we start to see more positive social media reception and word of mouth spread, that people are starting to understand the game better and are starting to have a lot more fun, and we see those player numbers stay resilient or rise even over the next few days before it starts to peter out a little bit. But overall, over the long term, we see the game maintain decent enough player numbers where we can see this lasting a couple years, then that'll indicate a healthy live service. But for now, what I can see is that I don't think Highguard's launch was a complete home run, and the negative reception surrounding some of its decisions, with Steam reviews here being still overwhelmingly negative, despite almost 5,000 people now after refreshing this page having reviewed the game, it just doesn't inspire confidence that this live service is long for a long-term future. While the game is far from being like this complete travesty or anything, none of this is indicative of a game that's overwhelmingly winning the hearts of people to a degree where you can fully say, oh, we were completely wrong about the potential of Highguard maybe not doing so hot over the long term. It doesn't create a scenario where you can confidently say this game will definitely make a comeback. We don't quite know yet, and it's just right now, things are looking a little shaky, but we'll see what happens. This is my take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on Highguard. If you've played it yourself, do you think this game has the potential to capture an audience and for this to be a healthy live service? Or do you feel like based on everything we've seen from the first couple hours of Highguard's launch that this game will kind of peter out over time? What do you think fate holds for Highguard? What do you foresee the potential and prospects of this game being? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.